Hello everyone, FedResults would like to welcome you to our Tableau webinar. Before we get started, I would like to go over a few housekeeping items. All of your lines have been muted to reduce background noise, and we hope you will ask questions using the Q&A tab on the left side of your screen. We will do our best to answer all of your questions at the end of the presentation, but if for some reason we do not get to your questions, the Tableau team at FedResults will follow up with you offline. Our contact information will be at the end of the presentation, so please do not hesitate to call or email us with any questions or for more information. This webinar is Andrea Schoen, Tableau Practice Lead, and Ben Hahn, Managing Partner. Team, the floor is all yours.
All right, thank you, Tayo. My name is Ben Hahn, and I'm a managing partner at Alpine Consulting Partners, as Tayo said. Thank you all to everyone for joining today, and that you are attending this webinar means that you're probably interested in effective Tableau dashboards or efficient processes for organizational budgeting. I'm so excited to have the opportunity alongside Tableau, FedResults, and my team here at Alpine to discuss both of those things. How financial and budgeting applications work together paired with some good data management and visual analytics to really bring budget analysis into a place that is efficient and accessible for budget analysis, for budget analysts and CFOs. What we'll be covering today, our agenda is as follows. First, I'm going to present a little background about who Alpine Consulting Partners is. And why we're qualified specifically to present this topic, why you should listen to us. After that, I want to establish some shared context around the problem being addressed. Why does an agency need a budgeting application, and why, if they have a budgeting application, is visual analytics helpful on top of that for budget analysis? At the bottom of the slide, you can see we're not only Tableau partners, we're also partners with several EPM software vendors. For those who are less familiar with the industry, EPM stands for Enterprise Performance Management, and it's basically a glorified term for budgeting software and software related to financial management, financial analysis, and financial close. We've partnered with Oracle, OneStream, Tepion, Profix, and worked with several other related EPM technologies to really learn what's going on in the industry and technology over the last 10 years and how we can best serve the needs of our clients with those technologies. And that's a big motivation for this presentation is even becoming experts in those technologies, why we find it so useful to have BI platforms such as Tableau on top of budget implementations. After setting the stage, I'll pass it off to the real talent of this presentation. Dan Angelelli and Andrea Schoen will take you through a hands-on demonstration of what you really came here to see, which is the effective budget dashboards using Tableau. Last on our agenda, as Tayo said, we'll have some time for Q&A, and we'll provide our contact details on the screen for anyone who wants to continue the conversation beyond the webinar. All right, so let's step right into it. Today's presenters, once again, my name is Ben Hahn, and I've been a managing partner at Alpine for the last 3 years. Our team, I'll share a little bit more background on in the next slide when we talk about our capabilities. Overall, my role has been to work with clients, particularly in the federal sector, to help implement budget solutions, but also listening to our clients' needs to see what other technologies, what other resources and processes are necessary. So I'm the guy who really gets to connect the needs that our clients have to our team and their talents. So moving on, let's talk about that. Andrea Schoen is our Tableau practice lead. In addition to being an expert in really all things Tableau, she is skilled in infrastructure. She has over 70 engagements with Tableau-related and analytics-related engagements. So we're really thrilled to have her in place, leading our team, leading our strategy around BI and implementation. She also had a past life working at Tableau in their federal consulting services. So it's for this reason we have a strong connection with Tableau, and we're really able to blend the right ear and the right perspective perspective to our clients in the budgeting sector who are looking to get more onto the BI side of things. In addition, I'd like to introduce Dan Angelelli. He's a senior BI architect at Alpine Consulting Partners. He's an expert in visualization technologies, certified in OBIEE, certified in Tableau. In addition, Dan is our resident expert and architect, our guru for data modeling, automated data transformations, as well as data warehousing. So now I'd like to share the story of Alpine Consulting Partners. Alpine Consulting Partners is a small business primarily focused on improving budget processes for public sector organizations. About 80% of our work is doing that in the federal sector, and 20% is a mix of state, local, and education clients, as well as working with a couple commercial clients who are maybe a little ahead on the technology curve, but keep our skills sharp in the areas I'm about to present. All of our practitioners come out of larger consulting practices with previous public sector experience, and as a team, we hold combined decades of experience specifically toward this use case of public sector budgeting and analysis. As I said, we started at bigger organizations, really on the EPM side of things. From there, working with our clients, we listened and we heard there's a huge need for business intelligence and data visualization. That's a lot of what we'll be talking about today. Those things are great, and I think demos are really shiny. Another thing we want to highlight are these last two capabilities, the data transformation management and modeling, as well as the cloud services and infrastructure that go behind these services. It's really important in our experience that you have in your organization the talent to do those things in an efficient way and the right infrastructure so that you can generate the right data assets to support budget analysis. All right, now that you've heard a little bit about our company, let me hop into the context. What are some common pain points that we see in our experience? Again, these combined decades of experience across our team, across hundreds of clients in the public and private sector. What are some of the commonalities that prescribe data analytics on top of a budgeting system? Those things I want to step into today more are version control, delta comparison, separate systems that are involved in budgeting, structural changes across time, and then the actionable timely actions and alerts so that you know when to take action as a budget analyst, as a CFO, as a division or program area user. Number one, version control. This is one of the most common issues we see and one of the common ways that clients get involved with budgeting systems. Whether that's coming straight from your budget system or an Excel spreadsheet, maybe your processes are an Excel spreadsheet at the end of the day. A lot of times the output we get starting is budget V1. But as many of you know who work in budget offices, that quickly becomes budget final. And then maybe there's some adjustments on top of that after a congressional data call. And then maybe you remember that you need to split out IT by fund for certain OMB reporting requirements. Budget analysts work really hard to get these data so that they're accurate, but sometimes they can get lost in a bunch of spreadsheets. When we go to generate our budget books, we see that in this case, maybe we need some data from two different spreadsheets or two different data sources to generate one budget book submission for the secretarial submission. And then when we went to the Office of Management and Budget, the President's Budget Office, that's where we see we actually only use one source on the far right. Later, a year from now, when someone asks us, hey, I need to see the detailed analysis of a particular account or line item, sometimes it's hard to know where to look. And sometimes when we want to compare future data to past data, it's really useful if we just have one system of record. A lot of what we focus on is generating the right budget processes that we can collect all of your requirements and store them in a single efficient system that whether you're formulating your budget, forecasting future out-year budgets, or executing on that budget, it's stored in one place. And that has a lot to do with our experience in EPM technology. It also has a lot to do with our experience in data warehousing. So I think both of those things combine well, and this is another example of that synergy. When you have everything together, whether you're generating budget books, interactive spreadsheets to edit the data, interactive reports to view the data, or formatted reports that are canned reports you send out to, for instance, blasting them out to all of your programming areas. Having a single source of truth gives high confidence that this is something your organization can do on your own. And by having conformed version names, so taking the effort as a budget office to say, hey, we're all going to use the name Be Secretarial and really set up our processes that we're approving and working toward that final version. That way across your agency, there's a drop down and someone can select the FY21 Be Secretarial submission, and everyone will get the same data no matter in which format they're looking at it. Pain point number 2, delta comparison. And these pain points will kind of increase in complexity as we move forward. How does the submission compare to past one? One thing we see with budget processes, they're really good at generating one version of the budget. So for instance, we generated our secretarial budget submission and also our OMB budget submission. Maybe some more information comes out and we have a need for a what-if version that's somewhere in between the two of them. Something that's difficult to do in a lot of budget systems is actually to compare these data together. And one thing that visualization is really useful for, and that we'll showcase in our demo today, is variance reporting. This is a really common use case that, although there might be the right budget processes in place, it's just difficult to see the differences, whether that's at the detail level or rolling it up, slicing and dicing across the organization. This is one place we see visual analytics is super useful for budget offices. Next common pain point, are we operating on plan? This is a really common question. What is the burn rate? What is the status of funds? How does our budget compare to our actual data? What we see in reality is your enacted budget may be in the best budgeting system that you need, but there's going to be related upstream and downstream systems you need to connect to, and those have a lot of different requirements. You may have a general ledger system that's stored in, let's say, an Oracle database, and that's hosted maybe by the secretarial level. It's not hosted on site, it's a shared service, so we have certain rules we need to connect to that and get the data. Procurement details, maybe we access those through a Discover report or a PDF flat file. Those are things that we want to ingest to get really detailed, granular data about how our contracts are executing. And then we also have some really secure data like payroll files that might come from the National Finance Center, but there's an added level of security and handling we need to take when we're handling that data and making it available to users who have the right permission to do employee-level analysis. This stuff is really hard to think, and a lot of times what we see when we talk to budget analysts is they have dual monitors and they may have the budget report on one screen and on the other screen looking at the GL to make sure everything ties together. One of our core competencies that we'll speak to during this presentation is how we can implement data transformation, our experience in working with data information offices of security to get together the rules, the processes, and the automation to link this data together in a way that's either highly structured in the case of a reporting data mart or unstructured but useful in the case of a data lake. All right, and this I think is maybe the most complicated pain point, but something that really becomes relevant for multi-year budgeting. How does this year compare to previous years or future years? And this is where I want to bring in the idea of structural changes. This is right now a weakness in a lot of budget technologies that slowly changing dimensions, for those of you who are more technical, is not a common feature. And this is a lot of what we build in on the back end based on our knowledge of these systems. So let's look at a common use case. Here's your organizational structure through the end of this year, September 30th, FY19. Right now, under one directorate, we have these 3 blue divisions. What's going to happen in the next fiscal year? We know that one of those blue divisions is going to switch from its current directorate to a new one. And that poses the question when we're reporting on data over time, if we're looking gold up at the directorate level, what do we want to show? This is where the concept of slowly changing dimensions comes in play. And through a well-designed back-end system, that's how we're able to, based on the user's preferences, we can show prior year data like it's in the new format, we can show the new format like it's in a prior year, or we can do a hybrid of those two options. And that's where the level of complexity can change based on your organizational requirements. Having a well-structured database for multi-year reporting allows for alternate roll-up and we take into consideration granularity changes. A common use case we see and challenge for budget organizations is previously you were tracking your budget at one level, and then in a future year, maybe you need a further level of account detail. Alternately, sometimes the accounts can get summarized, and you might not have a requirement that's a regulation that you are adhering to. This is where it's really important to have an implementation partner who has experience in data and can orchestrate a well-designed database or data lake so that you can analyze changes over time. All right, and that brings me to our last common use case, common pain point for how visual analytics can help a lot in having good data structures for budgeting: timely actions and alerts. What we see at many clients is, first, to get into budget data, you have a separate login for another system. We've got a lot of systems all over the government. You need to find and load the report. There might be some caching time. It's time out of your day. You save the file locally. Maybe you're a decision maker and you need to make sure the right people see this. So then you email it out to the group and discuss it. And this is fine. It's like, if the system's well designed, this is also fun to do in my experience. But we can make this better, and we can save more time in your day. With applications like Tableau, we can schedule reports, and with automation features, we can trigger notifications so that if there are certain warnings, like status of funds below, we can send out an email. And we can not just send that to you, but any relevant users who are subscribed. And some of those users can even comment in line with reports, depending how you want to set up your reporting architecture. So I think this is something that is a luxury of more modern technology, that we can have notifications and know when to act instead of always taking the time out of our day to spend on budget analysis. I think in that arena, we all want to spend more time on budget analysis. In reality, the day-to-day of responding to data calls, just making sure everybody, our users, respond to the system and create their budgets, that ends up occupying a lot of time. So any shortcuts we can have to get there are definitely things that help out our clients. Thank you for listening to me about these common pain points. In particular, I want to talk about these as the need for having visual analytics, and as we walk into our demonstration with Dan Angelelli and Andrea Schoen, for you to keep these in mind and see how our dashboards address some of these common pain points. On the last note, and summing this back together, the parts I was talking about, enterprise performance management, whether you have an Oracle Hyperion system, whether you are based in spreadsheets, whether you're implementing OneStream, Kepion, or Propix, or a host of other technology, one piece in place is having high-quality budget data, and that's really our first foot in the door. Once those processes are set up, and what we want to focus on today is how having proper data warehousing and management of that data, and then adding the BI, the data visualization layer, how that can really make your budget analysis efficient, saving a lot of time when you're building your budget books, when you're responding to data calls, on how you can make it more effective. All right, without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to Dan Angelelli.
All right. Now that we've explained what we do in the enterprise performance management realm and how we support that on the back end through data warehousing and ETL, we're finally going to walk through the fun part. Once all that's done and in place, how do we report on that information? How do we actually perform the analytics and gain our insights onto what our existing data looks like and on our forecasts? To answer these questions, we've built a set of demonstration dashboards that we'll walk through and really highlight the different functionality around being able to slice and dice the data. The data structure and reporting requirements are modeled off of our existing clients, and we've framed the dashboards around this fictional Alpine mountaineering agency that covers a lot of really representative use cases that we see around the federal space. So to get started with our demo and set the scene a little bit, we'll be looking at this agency. Their mission is to make the mountains of the world more accessible by improving mapping technology and publishing maps. And they're currently in the middle of their budget submission process. They're working on their congressional budget justification. Diving into the data, we're going to start at an agency level, and I'll take on the perspective where I'm thinking like a budget manager or even a CFO. So let's get started. All right, so here we are at our agency overview. We're looking at our congressional budget justification. And we can see the important numbers jumping out at us just at a glance. We can see our top line dollar amounts, and as well as the FTEs that we're requesting, and a few other indicators in a mix of graphs and dynamic text. We've got a breakout across our mission funding, as well as some additional detail for our salaries and benefits. At this agency, employees are a huge part of the budget. They account for more than half. So there's some extra detail on this dashboard to make sure the agency can track that, make sure everybody can get paid now and in the future. So this agency breaks out their funding in a few different ways. One is by mission area, but the main way that they track their funding is across their directorates, across their org chart. So that's what we'll look at now. This is a really simple, clean bar chart out of the box from Tableau with just a little bit of formatting. And it's great because it puts the numbers in context, and you can see which directors have a relatively small budget, which ones have a large one. For example, our director for communications here, which makes sense. This agency produces a lot of publications, a lot of maps. That's why the budget would be larger. So we've got the sort of lay of the land here with the bar chart. Let's say an analyst wants to dig a little bit deeper and do further analysis without leaving the flow of their dashboard. One way that Tableau lets you do that is through tooltips. So I'm going to take my mouse and just mouse over this bar or over any piece of data on the dashboard. And now on my tooltip, I've got all this additional information. And this can be out-of-the-box dynamic text, or it can be more complicated things. For example, we've got an entirely separate visualization here looking at a breakout by object class code. This is a really, really powerful feature because it gives you all of the focused information that you want just on the numbers you care about without cluttering up your main view. Now that we've gotten a little bit of a look at the different ways this agency breaks out their funding internally, let's take a look at the external reporting. Some of you may be familiar with OMB object class codes. For those of you who are not, the Office of Management and Budget requires that all federal agencies report out their funding in this standard set of buckets. These object class codes are used for reporting across the government. And in this agency, and really every agency, there's a little bit of transformation that goes into obtaining these OMB object class codes. And that transformation is some of the work that happens in the EPM systems that we were talking about that feed into this dashboard. So let's look into that mapping and see if we can get some more details on what that transformation is like. Using the tooltips again, and click. And now there's a link to drill into a mapping specifically looking at that analysis. So we'll click that. And here we're looking at a flowchart really focused on that mapping. This view is nice because it's really dynamic. We can change around and slice the data in different ways. But right now, we're looking at our budget dollars and specifically how they transform from our internal codes into what we report externally to Office of Management and Budget. A really common use case that this excels at is overhead. For example, we can see how our overhead charges, which are not reportable to OMB, are allocated down to what we actually do send out to the Office of Management and Budget. And we can see down to the dollar level or across any other metrics that we want. This view is really flexible, and it's great because we're using dollars here, but really any metric that's in the data that's meaningful to that agency can be tracked on something like this. And we can break it out in a variety of different ways based off of whatever breakouts, program, org chart, any points in a process, anything that's meaningful to that particular agency. So far, with just a couple of clicks and a few really insightful views, we've gotten an overview of what the agency's budget looks like. Now that we understand the budget, let's compare it to something else. I'll use the back button, go back where I came from, and now let's look at this version comparison dashboard. Federal agencies make a lot of different versions, different slices of their budget, and this is just part of the budget submission process. We touched on this a little bit earlier, but there are so many different versions. There's a submission to the department secretary, there's a submission to the Office of Management and Budget, to Congress, to actuals, and then there are a variety of internal budgets for planning and what-if scenarios. And one common struggle is finding really useful and effective ways to compare these different slices of data to each other. And that's what we're doing here. So to continue our scenario, I'm still looking at this from the perspective of a CFO. And this agency is working on their congressional budget justification. But on top of that, there's an additional bucket of funding that they've requested. They haven't heard back yet, but they want to plan it out and see what it would look like, what would be the impact if that funding is approved. And that's what we're looking at here with this what if. So at a glance, again, we can get the context of the numbers. Jumping out at me, most of our funding is coming from this one fund, cartographic mission funding. And this is the same fund where we requested the increase in funding. So this is a great analysis of what the funding sources look like. But this agency manages more by their different directorates. And the directors want to see what the impact is going to be to them. So we'll use our drop-down. And instead of breaking this out by fund, we can look at it by director. And now the directors can see exactly how this budget affects them. Some of them will be getting an increase, and some of them should plan for a cut. This view really gives me the context for the numbers and how the different directors compare to each other and what those changes look like. But sometimes a budget analyst just wants to see the data. And that's what we've got down here below. It's a really simple table. It's just our first version, the thing we're comparing it to, and then what are the deltas. It's a really accessible, simple breakout, and it's sliced up in exactly the same way as our chart above, using the same set of drop-downs. Now, this is a great example of when you've done the back-end data work to build that really solid foundation for Tableau. You can do a lot of different things in terms of slicing and dicing the data on the dashboards. Tableau is actually calculating a lot of these numbers on the fly based off of the foundation we've given it, so the analyst can have that really interactive experience that isn't dependent on a static view. This dashboard is a really useful starting point for a conversation around what change is going to be coming and what action do we need to take to start reacting to this change. It could be something that an analyst uses to really start that conversation, maybe in Tableau Online using the comments, or even exporting it to PDF or to PowerPoint and taking it to a meeting with their manager. So far we've looked at a few different ways to break down the budget and how it compares at the agency level to a few different versions. Now to go a little bit deeper in that analysis and look at a program area view, I'll hand it off to Andrea Schoen.
So now we're looking at this program analysis view. Like Dan said, we're switching our perspective from that of a budget manager to now looking at a more narrow focus view, that of a budget analyst or a program manager, in this case for cartography. So in this dashboard, we're looking at our budget in a little bit more detail for the North America activity. And again, we're looking at our what-if version. If I want to look at, if I want to come to this dashboard, for example, as a client, one of our clients would be coming to this dashboard looking for a little bit more detail about exactly what's going on in a particular budget. So if we are in between cycles, for example, and we want to know what's happening if I change funding or if I change FTE in a particular program or in a particular activity, I could come to a dashboard like this and see how that information is affecting my bottom line. When I land here, for example, for my cartography program, I see some high-level statistics about my activities. So total dollars, total FTE, under my projects, the number of projects, the amount of money being spent per project on average, the total number of FTE, and an average salary and benefits information. So I get all of that snapshot information up above. If I'm interested in a lower level of detail, let's say now going from activity to sub-activity, that's kind of the natural progression of the dashboard. We'll see on the left-hand side a visualization of our different sub-activities, so my total budget allocated to date for particular areas, as well as a geographic distribution of that same information. That may or may not be applicable to, let's say, federal data, but we're going to consider it for our use case just because we know we're dealing with geographic data. If I want to narrow in even further, let's say I want to look at just a single sub-activity, I can go ahead and click on any one of these bars, let's say the St. Elias mountain range, and narrow my perspective of the dashboard to that view. So when I click on that bar, now I'm looking at just those projects related to the sub-activity of the St. Elias Mountains. So again, I'm drilling down further and further into my information. Now I can get a little bit more detail about my different project levels. I can see down below different total FTE costs for the different projects within there. And up above on my geographic distribution, I can also hover over a particular point to get some more detail. When I hover over a particular point, we'll see that same breakdown that Dan showed earlier of an object class code breakout. We're reusing the same visualization here, a really handy feature in Tableau that we can continue to reuse information but use dynamic filters on the fly. So what's been really great about this dashboard, what we've done, kind of tying back into some of the themes that Ben talked about creating and curating data, we've been able to go from a really top level, that program level view, and drill down very easily, very naturally within Tableau. So we've gone from the program level, looking at cartography, to already getting some information at the activity level, then drilling down into the sub-activities and the projects, getting a lot of information, a lot of detail very naturally and very fluidly. So that kind of progression seems like it should be natural and be out of the box, but it does come with a lot of that back-end work. So the things that we're doing on the back end to really ensure that our metadata lines up, that our programs, for example, are well-defined and our activities are well-defined and have these relationships, that back-end work results in a lot of flexibility in our front end. And that's what Tableau is great at as a data visualization tool, is that it's able to utilize those kinds of relationships and give us really easy drop-downs, really easy filters, really easy clickability, and stuff like tooltips that filter dynamically for us. So we've taken a really simple view. We've been able to go through it in just a few minutes, get a lot of insight, in just using really out-of-the-box features in Tableau that we've formatted pretty nicely. So now that we've looked at a program view of our budget data, let's now talk about some of our actuals, what the agency is actually executing against, how the money is actually being spent. So we're going to jump into our program status of funds dashboard, which is a one-stop shop for viewing how my money is actually being spent. So this dashboard is representative of a type of analysis that our clients would use on a really frequent basis. It's similar in that we land on the dashboard, we see a lot of the similar usage of scorecards up top to give us those high-level metrics. So landing here, we can see we're looking at some of the same filters. Our cartography program, in this case now we're looking at our actual, so the money we're actually spending, again for that cartography program area. The key level metrics that we see are everything as it relates to our budget and our expenditures. So we looked at all of our budget information previously. We have that total budget amount, and then we can see in our scorecards how that money progresses down essentially the expenditure line. So how much money we have committed, how much is obligated, how much is expended, and given us an overall idea of how many funds are actually remaining. So we've created this really clear view up top. Down below, that same information is broken out at the activity level. So here we show it at the activity level, which happens to be our different countries. This could also be, if we were looking at a higher level view, it could be programs, it could be divisions or directorates, whatever we wanted to based on how we had set up our metadata on the back end. What's really nice about this dashboard is we can, in just a single view, get a snapshot of what's going on. So this is a program level view. Imagine a CFO coming here looking at, let's say, the top level view of the entire agency. They could see exactly how much money they have left to spend and where maybe that money needs to be reallocated. So this dashboard, if someone's receiving it daily on email, or they're coming here every day and checking out what the status of funds is, for example, they could see that, say, Asia has a lot of funds remaining in that particular activity. So maybe that's a signal for a budget analyst or a program manager to reallocate those funds to other programs that might need them. And that's something that we can see really easily, really clearly in this view. That's one thing bullet charts are really great at, is being able to show the comparison of all this information. So our clients really like this because they can see all these different categories of the expenditures and how they relate to the overall budget. The categorization is important, and the comparison is done in these different categories over time. So we like to be able to capture and compare all of that all in one place. Another really good check that this dashboard could be used for is, again, making sure we're not overspending. So especially towards the end of the fiscal year, when our clients are really starting to count dollars, count pennies as they're moving around money, re-obligating and committing money towards the end of the fiscal year, they want to know exactly how much is being spent, where it's being spent, and how they can allocate it. That would be a really good example for, like Dan mentioned earlier, either downloading the views or subscribing to the views. Subscribing is a really awesome way to get a particular image on or a particular dashboard on a set basis. So our clients, for example, towards the end of the year might be interested in subscribing to this view on a more frequent basis, maybe twice a day, 3 times a day, to see how those expenditures are rolling through. And they could choose to receive that in Tableau, which is the simple click of a button, choosing a schedule that they had available on their server, and choosing when that would be delivered to them. So again, kind of going back to the same theme of, this is a really clean, easy to read dashboard that gives us a lot of information, but is also very easy to interact with, very legible from the start. Creating that kind of comparison on the back end, again, is where all the work is going to occur. Like Ben mentioned earlier, normally our enterprise performance management, our EPM information, like our budget planning, our budget forecasting, will be in a particular tool, or maybe a set of spreadsheets, whatever that source information is. And then the lift will definitely be to marry up all that information, so the commitments, obligations, all that actual financial transaction data with the initial budget information. So being able to do that comparison isn't always straightforward, but if we are able to define the data models on the back end correctly, we can come to a place like this where we can show really clean views doing that comparison and giving users the option to dynamically change things. And that's something that, again, Tableau is a really great complement for, being able to have all these different easy drop-downs, easy drills, easy filters that provide a natural progression and a natural drill in the data to continue to do analysis. So rather than worrying about formatting or how something is being built, you can really just come here and say, like, okay, I have 2.74 million remaining. I see a little bit in my Asia region, but what if I want to drill down to that and see exactly where that money is being spent? That progression becomes a lot easier to analyze. That analytics become easier to do in a good data visualization tool like Tableau, when we have that data structure set up well. So that kind of concludes our demo portion of the dashboard. So just to recap kind of what we looked at from the beginning, Ben talked a lot about a lot of budget planning, forecasting, and execution issues that a lot of federal agencies run into, which again are common in federal, also seen across commercial enterprises as well. We talked about how BI and EPM, kind of that marriage of solutions, can help solve those challenges and really streamline data processes. And finally, what sample BI dashboards might look like that are based on these data structures. So taking information from an EPM system, but also financial transaction systems, and putting it together in one place to create really clean, easy to use, and functional dashboards that allow easy budget analysis. So with that, I'm going to hand it over back to Tayo for Q&A. We have our contact information here, and again, this webinar will be sent out. I'm sure you all will have our contact information if needed. But with that, we will go to Q&A.
Thank you, Andrea. And now for the Q&A portion. If you could please direct your questions to the Q&A tab on the left side of your screen, we will answer your questions as they come in. And it looks like we have our first question here. How difficult is it for users to edit these reports?
I'll take this one. The quick answer is not that difficult. And let me actually show you how easy it can be. I'll just share my screen really quickly.
Okay. Are you able to share your screen?
Yeah, just one moment.
And I think it looks like on Captivate we're missing one button right now. While we work on the screen sharing, is it possible to go to the next question?
So the next question is, what kind of data transformation and formatting went into building this dashboard?
This is Andrea. I can take that question while Dan brings up his screen share. So we then mentioned at the beginning we modeled this data and these dashboards off of an existing federal client that we work with, where we are implementing both the enterprise performance management system as well as kind of the BI and analytics portion. So we do maintain both kind of the multi-dimensional backend of the EPM solution in addition to the relational components, relational data sets that come in, for example, through financial transaction data, payroll data. We marry all that up in a backend. So we put it all into a relational SQL server. And from there, we're able to create the data models, the schemas that we need based on our reporting needs. So on our and I'll speak kind of to our client's use case, which the presentation kind of represents. The biggest effort is definitely transforming the data so that the level of effort can be on the export of our multidimensional data as well as marrying it up with the different levels in our relational data. So what we see with our clients, for example, is that the hardest part often, once we have our source data, is matching up different levels of information. So we looked at different dimensions like program, division or directorate, object class codes. Like Dan mentioned when he was showing the object class data, those can be at different levels even within a division, almost certainly across the agency. So depending on how different divisions report on information, they might have different levels of detail, different levels of budgeting. So being able to match all that information up on the back end and create a consistent structure for reporting is definitely the heaviest lift. It really, again, like time-wise, it depends, of course, on the type of data that you have and any additional transformation that goes in it. But those are kind of the general level of effort that goes into the kind of ETL work we do. Using Tableau, we do utilize some of the lightweight ETL stuff in Tableau itself, changing names, etc., and occasionally using Tableau Prep to do actions like pivoting data if we have some ad hoc data sources. But generally, we do try and build everything into an automated flow in our ETL software, just so we have everything automated in one place and flowing through our SQL server for reporting.
Thank you, Andrea. Can my agency build a similar solution on our own?
Yeah, great question. So I think I want to approach that with two different answers. And the first is yes. Through our wonderful friends at FedResults and Tableau, I think there are a lot of ways for agencies to easily get started with Tableau and purchase some of the desktop type licenses, creator licenses, to get going and exploring ways that if you already have budget data or actuals or even maybe two different sources, it's fairly easy to get the skills and training to start getting connected and doing visual analysis. The second part of that answer is also yes. It really helps to have an experienced implementation partner. Going back to those pain points that I was presenting earlier in the presentation, as you get more involved with building out a visual analytics group, and especially around budget analysis, it's important to know all of the structural challenges you might face ahead of time and to set yourself up for success. So some of those things that play well with Tableau. Data governance is a big topic. How can we make sure that when we publish data sources that they're certified, that everyone knows those are correct, and that they're made widely available to the right source people who need them, but are not available from a security perspective to people who cannot have access to that data. So that's one topic we can do with Tableau to help out your organization. Another thing an experienced implementation partner should be able to do is to set you up with the templates and best practices so that you have already, for instance, calculated formulas in your Tableau spreadsheets, to have those that are commonly available to your organization and that you can utilize to have consistent look and feel for your visualizations. So even people outside of the budget office in your organization will feel comfortable with the reports, and it can match any enterprise standards. So those on the Tableau front are just some of the considerations why it's really, especially when you're getting started with an implementation, you can save a lot of long-term total cost of ownership, a lot of long-term headaches by bringing in an implementation partner that you trust and that has a lot of experience with the front end of Tableau, but also all of the back end infrastructure considerations and data management things that Andrea just spoke to. All right, thank you for that question, and I think we're ready to do some screen sharing. Tyler, could you repeat that first question, please?
Of course. How difficult is it for users to edit these reports?
So the short answer is it's not very difficult if you give them permission to, and I think we can talk through that, but it'd be even more powerful if I show it. So that's why I wanted to get the screen share up. And Tayo, is my screen visible for everyone right now?
It is.
Perfect. So I'll actually walk you through how to go through a quick edit. And it can happen online in Tableau Server. There's an edit button for power users, anyone that you give permission to make these kinds of edits. And you can just navigate to whichever it is you want to change. So here we're on one of the dashboards that we reviewed, and if we want to make any layout changes or cosmetic changes, all of that can happen here. But it's also very quick and easy to change a specific viz. For example, let's go to this bar chart and switch it up. Let's say we want to add FTE as a common example. So you can just select it from this panel on the side with all of our metadata that we built out. And you can drag and drop, which is really powerful in Tableau. But before I show you that, Tableau also has this Show Me button that gives you some hints, takes a little bit of the guesswork out of it, or can be a quick start to some dashboards that then you drag and drop to modify. But right now, let's actually just do that drag and drop, and let's bring FTE onto color. And you can see it was super easy to change the view, and we can pivot it in different ways, add or remove fields with that drag and drop, and then either publish this back if we have permissions to do that by just doing save, or we could just close out. We don't really care about it right now since this is a demo. So the short answer is that it can be really fast to have anyone who is confident with the data and who knows the best practices that you're trying to implement to pull up a view and make it fit exactly what a budget analyst or any sort of user is asking for.
Thank you. We have another question here. Are there embedded permissions in the dashboard to restrict access?
I can take that one as well. Andrea, I'll let you handle that one.
Okay. So short answer is no on this particular dashboard because it is a demo one. We don't have permissions embedded, but with our clients, this is something we typically do. So they tend to be multi-layer security. So we'll do some permissions on the actual dashboard that ideally are linked to like Active Directory groups. So we link permissions, kind of embed them that way with existing Active Directory groups. And on the data side, similarly, we'd restrict based on existing security that we have. So we usually set up dimension-based security in our EPM applications, and we'd reflect the same thing, ideally, again, through those Active Directory groups in Tableau, or some combination of embedding access at the database layer as well.
Thank you, Andrea. And we can wait a moment here for any additional questions. Okay, looks like that's all the questions that we have for today. We'd like to take this time to invite you to the Tableau Conference being held November 12th through the 15th in Las Vegas, Nevada. The Tableau Conference is the place to learn how public sector agencies and organizations are measuring and improving outcomes, increasing efficiency, and reducing risk with the intelligent use of visualization, reporting, and data analytics. Visit tableau.com to learn more and get registered. I'd like to thank our participants as well as the Alpine Consulting team for being with us today. We hope the information you received during this presentation has been helpful for you and your organization. Our Tableau team here at FedResults is working extended hours to support federal organizations throughout the end of the federal fiscal year. Please contact our team using the information on this slide to learn more about special end-of-year discounts available to help you get started with Tableau. Thanks again and have a great day.